Hello Miracle Fighters and welcome back to the Team Miracle 4 channel. It's been a while since our last D-Standard video as we've been putting out quite a bit of V Premium content. So today I'll be doing a D-Standard deck profile. This time I'll be showing off Roxy's Stoicheia Flagburg Dragon deck. As you guys know, Roxy is a big Aqua Force fan, and when Flagburg Dragon was first announced in D-Standard, she knew she had to give the deck a try. Seeing that this deck is literally the D version of Aqua Force, right? Now, she really enjoys the deck's playstyle and artwork and is one of her favorite D-Standard decks. So without further ado, let's get right into the deck. We'll start off first with the right deck. So we'll put our main deck aside. Our right deck consists of Officer Cadet Characles, Inroad Shooter, Ascendance Assault, and of course the Flagship Dragon, Flagburg Dragon. So let's have a look at their effects individually. Start off with Characles, the basic starter effect. When rolled upon, if you went second, draw a card. We just played him because he fits the deck, like the aesthetic of the deck, right? It's meant to go along with Flagburg Dragon. And for the grade 1, we have Inroad Shooter. So his effect is when rolled upon by Ascendance Assault, which is the grade 2 over here. You can superior call it to rearguard circle. So that's a very nice plus for the field. And then on rearguard circle, he has a continuous ability, which is if your Vanguard is Flagburg Dragon or Ascendance Assault, so either the grade 2 or the grade 3, which is a guaranteed, he gets intercept and plus 2000 power. So basically it becomes like a grade 2. This is pretty decent. Calling him out on turn 2 can allow you to kind of rush the opponent a little. So that's a nice card. And then the grade 2 is Ascendance Assault. So similar to Inroad, when it's rolled upon, you can Soul Blast one card other than himself to superior call it to rearguard circle. However, if you have a Flagburg Dragon or Inroad Shooter in your hand, you can reveal it to not pay the cost. As in, instead of Soul Blast 1, you can choose to reveal a Flagburg Dragon or an Inroad Shooter from your hand to superior call Ascendance Assault, making him a free superior call. That's actually pretty good and kind of gives you an incentive to play a bit more Inroad Shooters in your deck so that you have a higher chance of being able to get off the free superior call. But the reason we want to call him out is because Ascendance Assault is one of this deck's best attackers. So on rearguard circle once per turn, when your other rearguards attacks a Vanguard, if your Vanguard is Flagburg Dragon, counterblast 1, restand this unit. Flagburg Dragon, who we'll see very soon, relies on making a certain number of attacks per turn, right? So having a restander, a guaranteed restander from the right deck is very good. So that's our Ascendance Assault. And then of course we have the Flagship Dragon, Flagburg Dragon for our grade 3 ride. Its ability is when it attacks a Vanguard, counterblast 1, you can perform all of the following abilities according to the number of attacks that you made that turn. If you made 3 or more attacks, draw a card. 4 more attacks, your opponent chooses 2 rearguards and retire them. 5 or more attacks. Until the end of that battle, Flagburg Dragon gets plus 10,000 power, and when your opponent would call cards from their hand to Guardian Circle, they must call 3 or more at the same time. So let's go through each one by one, slowly. So first one, 3 or more attacks to draw a card. That's very easy. You can swing with your 2 rearguards first, and then have Flagburg Dragon attack last. That's 3 attacks, and just get a free +1 free card in your hand. 4 or more, you get to retire 2 of your opponent's rearguards. Retire 2 is actually really good. Being able to plus while also getting rid of 2 cards on your opponent's side can put you ahead of the opponent by quite a bit. Not many cards in D-Standard can retire 2 straight up like that. Most of the time it's 1 for 1, so this is pretty nice. And then for the 5 or more attacks, that's the ultimate ability of Flagburg Dragon. You get a Spinning Valiant kind of guard restrict. 3 or more cards to guard your Vanguard's attack, and it will hit for minimum 23, so you can hit over defensives. To make 5 attacks, it means that you need 2 restanding rearguards. Your rearguards have to each attack 2 times because there's no Excel circles in this format. So is that difficult? I would say it's not that difficult, honestly, right? Especially since now we have new support from DBT04. Most of the times, if you're not super unlucky and you don't see your pieces, most of the time you will be able to actually make the 5 or more attacks. forcing out 3 cards from the opponent's hand to guard your Vanguard's attack is really insane if you combine it with the other 2 effects above, right? Because 4 more attacks, you're already killing off 2 cards from your opponent's field. 5 more attacks, you're ripping off 3 cards from your opponent's hand if they choose to guard the Vanguard. There's like 5 cards gone from your opponent and a draw for you. Hence, when you play Flagburg Dragon, you have to expect that your opponent will want to be guarding your rearguard attacks and taking for your Vanguard. Even though this mitigates the damage done to the opponent's hand, but it also kind of helps you because it means that your opponents will have less, chances to check defensive triggers from stopping your rearguard attacks, and it also makes it such that you're guaranteeing that you're forcing out cards from the opponent's hand. Now, if they choose to take for the rearguards and guard your Vanguard, then they will be faced with this insane garbage straight. Using a PG is very not worth against Flagburg because it means that you have to lose 4 cards from your hand, essentially, unless you have 1 or less cards in your hand, right, after using the PG. So all in all, there's really no winning for the opponent once you get to 5 or more attacks. And with this ability in mind, the entire deck is revolved around making the multi-attacks required for Flagburg Dragon's full effect. So now that we've seen what the main sort of win con and playstyle of the deck is, we can now go through the main deck and see how this deck is able to reach the attack thresholds that you need. So I'm going to be going through this deck profile a little differently this time, not by grade, but rather by the role of the card in the deck. So we'll just put these guys aside first. We'll start off first with the Restanders, right? The most important part of any Flagburg Dragon deck. So Flagburg Dragon's first wave of support gave us Ascendant's Assault as well as a Grass Blue Dragon. These 2 were the original Restanders for Flagburg Dragon. Now I've already gone through Ascendant's Assault. We are playing 1 copy in the right deck and 3 more in the main deck because it's a very useful Restander. So we're going to max him out. But we haven't gone through a Grass Blue, so let's have a look at a Grass Blue, which we are also maxing out. A Grass Blue Dragon's effect is, at the end of the battle that this unit attacks the rearguard once per turn, if your Vanguard is a Flagburg Dragon, you can Soul Blast 1 card to restand it. It forces you to attack a rearguard, which isn't too bad because you can still use it to kind of clear intercepts, right? And if it's attacking unboosted, 10k, generally you won't be able to hit your opponent's Vanguard. Right, your opponent's grade 3 Vanguard, so makes sense. And there's also not that many decks in D that can really clear that front row. So if your opponent tries to play around this, what it means is that they are probably forfeiting 1 attack. Generally, if you want to guarantee a Grass Blue Dragon's restand, you have to use him as the first attacker. Otherwise, your opponent might intercept everything for your first attack that is not a Grass Blue. So yeah, very simple skill, but it's a restanding skill, right? So that's already good enough. So with these 2 Restanders, you can reach 5 attacks easy with Flagburg as long as you have both on the field. The plan is basically to attack with a Grass Blue Dragon to a rearguard, so +1 restand it, attack with Ascendant's Assault, then attack with a Grass Blue, use Ascendant skill to restand itself, and then attack with Ascendance again, and you have just made 4 attacks, and then your Vanguard can go in for the 5th attack. So yep, those were the 2 original Restanders that Flagburg Dragon had. However, more decks are now getting abilities to retire, right? To retire cards on your field, and just having 8 Restanders might not be enough to really guarantee that you can hit the maximum threshold for Flagburg Dragon. Hence, to give us more consistency for our restanding, Bushrod gave Flagburg Dragon a new restander from in DBD04, and that is the Blue Artillery Dragon Inlet Pulse Dragon. Inlet Pulse has been a godsend for this deck so far, and not just for this deck, but rather for the entirety of Stoicheia, right? Because this card is also used in Magnolia, and is one of the main reasons why the Great for Magnolia build is really strong. Inlet Pulse Dragon's role in this deck is the 3rd Restander. So what he does is, at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, if it was the first battle of this turn and your Vanguard is a Flagburg Dragon, you can Soul Blast 1 and restand it. Simple yet effective. While it is grade locked, behind your Vanguard being grade 3, your opponent's Vanguard being grade 3 or greater, but being able to attack the Vanguard unboosted, as opposed to a Aggressive Blue Dragon which is forced to attack a rearguard, right, and get a restand, is really great because you can hit face and stand it up and hit your opponent's Vanguard again. The two Restanders here, the two grade 2 Restanders here are 10k base, but Inlet Pulse Dragon is at 13k base. So it's actually able to touch the Vanguard unboosted. There will be times where, these two Restanders are not even able to hit the Vanguard unboosted. So having a grade 3 Restander is super useful. He's locked behind the first battle as well, so generally you only need one copy of Inlet Pulse on the field at any given in any given turn, right? But that's not all. Inlet Pulse Dragon also has a second ability, which is at the end of a turn, if you made a total of 4 more attacks that turn, you can put Inlet Pulse into the soul to draw a card. Not only does Inlet Pulse Dragon help with making more attacks, but being able to replenish the soul that it used whilst giving you draw power and a way to dodge field control decks is really useful. All in all, Inlet Pulse Dragon is a definite 4-off staple in the Flagburg Dragon deck. And with that, we have our 12 Restanders in this deck. From 8 to 12, now we actually do see more Restanders in our hand, and the Flagburg Dragon is much more consistent in making the attack thresholds than before. Each of these Restanders have their own uses, right? And depending on which ones that you have on the board, you do have to adjust your attack patterns accordingly. Generally, Ascendant's Assault is the one that you is the more stable, the more like generic one, right? Because it uses a different resource to the other two. These two Restanders use Soul Blast, but Ascendants use a Counter Blast. And with our right deck actually pulling out cards from the Soul, we don't really have a lot of Soul to spare. So generally you do want one Ascendant's Assault and either an Aggressive Blue or Inlet Pulse on the other side. Regardless, your main goal is to basically see at least one Restander per turn so that you can hit the 4 attacks for Flagburg. I would say 4 is what you will most likely go for Flagburg. It's actually okay if you miss the 5 or more attacks. 4 is most of the time good enough. Unless the opponent has no rearguards, then sometimes you might just want to go for a third Vanguard attack and leave some of your rearguards standing for trigger effects and whatnot. But generally, Roxy tries to hit like 4 attacks for this deck. But 5 is actually very easy now. So if you can hit 5, why not, right? Now with the Restanders out, the rest of the deck is basically just cards that help you to manage your resources as well as improve your consistency in your game plan. So we'll start off first with 4 copies of the Prized Trident. So this is a very good utility card to help you manage your resources. Prized Trident's ability is, when your other unit attacks, if it is the 5th battle of that turn, put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. This is our way to recoup our used resources, and providing both soul and a countercharge is really good to ensure that we can continue to make our multi-attacks happen. Seeing your pieces to make 5 attacks is not difficult, but having the resources to actually make those 5 attacks happen can be an issue sometimes. So having cards like Prized Trident really helps in the long run, because if you want to make 5 attacks and use Vanguard skill at the same time, that's eating you at least, I would say, 2 Counter Blasts and a Soul Blast every single turn. So Prized Trident really helps to provide the resources that you need. And that's why I play 4 copies of Prized Trident. Since your Vanguard will often be the 5th attack, Prized Trident should never be used to boost the Vanguard, but instead be placed behind a rearguard so that you can use him as a booster first for an attack before retiring him when your Vanguard attacks. But yeah, that's for Prized Trident. Very good card. And I would say it's a staple for Flagburg. Another great one that has really good utility in this deck is the Conspiring Mutant Admantis. Admantis' ability is, when placed on rearguard circle, let's have a closer look. When placed on rearguard circle, you can choose one of your other rearguards to give it plus 5k until the end of turn. What Admantis does is basically you call him, you give 5k to one of your Restanders, and then that Restander will be able to use the 5k for 2 attacks. Adding 5k to your grade 2 Restanders means that your grade 2 Restanders can now touch the opponent's Vanguard for, for 5k guard, right? As opposed to before when they are just like, 10k bases. Adding 5k to cards like Inlet Pulse will make Inlet Pulse 18k, and being able to swing twice for 18k means that each attack is 10k guard. And unless your opponent has like a bunch of draw triggers, of the new draw triggers in their hand, 10k guard is really annoying to deal with. So Admantis is really good. He also helps out in early rush if you ever want to call him down early, because you're guaranteed to have a rearguard on the field through a right deck. Right. There are actually a few other alternatives to Admantis, such as these two Sylvan-Horned beasts, right? And all of them have their uses. I do see the other Sylvan-Horned beasts being used more often than Admantis now, but Roxy just prefers Admantis because Admantis doesn't disappear after using its skill, unlike the other two Sylvan-Horned beasts, and Admantis can just continue being a booster for the rest of the game after using its on-play skill. So yeah, that's the 3 Admantis there. And then just to round off the normal units, we're also running 4 PGs. Self-explanatory, Planar Prevent Dragon. This is the one that don't have to discard cards from your hand if you have, one or less cards, right? And oh yeah, I just realized I forgot to tell you guys how many in-road shooters we're playing. Roxy is actually maxing them out. I don't think that it's necessary to max out in-road shooters. What I might do is maybe cut down 1 in-road for any card that you would like to play. Probably 3 in-road shooters in this deck, just so we still have a chance to superior call Ascender's Assaults for free, but then not be clogged up with too many in-road shooters. I mean, in-road shooters are good, and Roxy playing so many great ones is because she tends to go for early rush when playing Flagburg Dragon, which is understandable. So it's really up to personal preference. But yes, Roxy is actually maxing out her in-road shooters here, and then of course we are playing the 3 more Flagburg Dragons in the deck for the Persona Ride. This deck's main goal is to keep on Persona Riding every single turn. Persona Riding every single turn means that your Restanders are bound to hit the Vanguard for trigger guard, and Flagburg Dragon with a Persona Ride every single turn is super scary. The difference between seeing a Persona Ride every single turn and not being able to Persona Ride with this deck is super big. So Flagburg Dragon is definitely a card that you guys would want to be mulliganing for when playing this deck. So yeah, that's basically all for the normal units. Before we move on to the triggers, let's talk about the order cards. So Roxy is actually playing 2 copies of Spiritual Body Condensation. Now this is one of Stoicheia's most solid order cards, right? What it does is Soul Blast 1, you can choose a card with grade equal to or less than your Vanguard from your drop zone, superior call it to rearguard circle, and give it plus 5k until the end of turn. This is a great order to help you get back Restanders that your opponent might have killed, and basically just reuse any normal unit in your drop. One neat combo that you can do with Spiritual Body Condensation and Inlet Pulse Dragon especially is, since Inlet Pulse Dragon goes into the soul at the end of its battle, the following turn, you can play a Spiritual Body Condensation from your hand, Soul Blast the Inlet Pulse Dragon, Superior Call the Inlet Pulse Dragon out, give it plus 5k, and now you have an 18k restanding rearguard. It's pretty amazing, right? So, Spiritual Body Condensation is very useful in this deck. The reason it's at low count is because this deck uses quite a bit of soul, as you guys might have realized. So we may not always have enough soul to play this order. So I think 2 copies is just nice. There are actually a lot of other orders that you guys can play in Flagburg Dragon. I'll be going through some of them towards the end of the video. Let me just finish off the main deck right now with the triggers. For the trigger lineup, Roxy is playing 7 critical triggers, 4 heal triggers, 4 of the effect draw triggers, and 1 Stoicheia over trigger. Okay, let's explain. So 4 effect triggers, because firstly this deck is piece reliant, so having the draw triggers is very useful because it allows you to basically just draw into your pieces. And we also are using the effect draws because they're 10k shield. When the opponent's Vanguard goes through a greater, 10k shield is really good. So there's 4 copies of that. We are running majority crits as opposed to fronts, because the way that this deck is played, you will mainly be using your rearguards first, right? And your Vanguard is generally the last attacker. Not always, but generally the last attacker. So crits actually work better, and fronts are just a bit redundant, right, when you check them. As I've established at the beginning of the video, your opponent will most likely be taking for your Vanguard's attack, because 3 card to guard 1 attack is super not worth in many people's eyes. So by playing the crits, it means that if your opponent no guards for your Vanguard's attack, the crits actually work better, since you can just, crit your opponent. So that's why we are playing 7 crits. 4 of the ones that move into soul for emergency soul use. Otherwise, sometimes the 5k base from the regular crits are better. So we play 4-3 like that. And then for heals, self-explanatory, right? You really need heals. They are also a way to counter charge. And then lastly, we have the Stoicheia over trigger. One of the better over triggers in my opinion, in terms of art and in terms of effect. So its additional effect is draw a card, choose one of your units, gets +1 crit until the end of turn. All of your frontrow units get plus 10k, and then if a damage zone has more cards than your opponents, choose a card from a damage zone and heal it. It's essentially all the regular triggers combined into one. So on top of the draw that you already get from the over trigger, this one allows you to draw 1 more time, so you're drawing 2. It gives a crit, it's also a front trigger, and it's also a heal trigger. This is really strong, right? So you definitely do want to play the Stoicheia over trigger. And that's pretty much the entire deck, right? Overall, the Flagburg Dragon deck is a rather thought-provoking deck that rewards good play and management of resources. The deck is piece reliant, but once you have those pieces out, the deck flows very smoothly and can be quite scary. As I've mentioned, Persona Right is super strong in this deck because of the way that this deck functions. So you basically just want to be seeing your Persona Rights every single turn. Without the Persona Right, the deck doesn't really hit for super high numbers. There's a lot of attacks, it's very annoying, but with the Persona Right, the deck's chances of winning shoots up super high. Flagburg Dragon is definitely not a deck to be underestimated, because it can steal games if you're not careful with the constant retiring ability and the pretty insane guard restrict effect. Now before I end off this video, just like to talk about some alternatives, especially in the order section, and as well as alternative deck builds that you guys might want to consider for the Flagburg Dragon deck. Okay, so for the alternatives, start off with the orders. One order that we used to play was Ghost Chase. So what this does is choose one of your units, give it plus 5,000 power until the end of the battle. It's a blitz order, right? So it's basically 5,000 shield. And then you can choose one of your rearguards that is not being attacked and return it to your hand. What Ghost Chase does is it allows you to return cards that you don't want your opponent to kill back into your hand during the opponent's turn. It's very useful in helping you prevent your opponent from, attacking into your rearguards, which are generally your Restanders. Or otherwise, what you can do with it is to bounce back on place, to bounce back cards like Admantis, so they can use the on place effect the following turn. Or if you have any great ones in your back row, this can return that great one to your hand so that you can actually use it for guarding. So it's a pretty useful order that you guys might want to consider. Another one that I see played is the Nectar of Sensationalism. Nectar of Sensationalism gives one of your units, or one of your rearguards, plus 5,000 power for every 5 cards in a drop, which isn't difficult at all. And it stacks, so 10 cards, that rearguard gets plus 10, 15, it gets plus 15. If your drop has 15 or more cards, that rearguard also gets an additional critical. This card's power shines in the late game when you have your drop zone filled up because you've been soul blasting, you've been guarding a lot, right? And if you choose one of your Restanders to give the power to, just plus 10k, right, is good enough to make guarding super hard for the opponent. If you can actually get off the 15, giving that Restander the +1 crit for 2 attacks is also super strong. So Nectar of Sensationalism is also something that you guys might want to consider. I've also seen players play In Search of an Ideal Far Away. What this does is you can choose one of your units until end of turn. It gets the ability when your other unit attacks, this unit gets plus 5000 power until the end of turn. So you can choose your Vanguard, you can choose a rearguard, whatever, it works. This is really useful in a deck like the Flagburg Dragon deck because you're multi-attacking. So let's say you choose a Vanguard, right? With your with your 2 Restanders in the front row, and with your Vanguard hit attacking on the 5th battle, it means that your Vanguard can get plus 5, 10, 15, 20,000 power through this order itself. Otherwise, you can also use this to pump up your rearguard attackers. Maybe one of the Restanders, right? That attacks just before the Vanguard, so that you can have it get plus 15k or so, which is also pretty good, right? It's just free power, so this is another order that you guys can also consider. And then of course, lastly, there's the Zorga 20k shield order that certain decks also play, just to add a bit more defense to the Flagburg Dragon deck. 20k shields are nothing to scoff at. And if you guys actually want to play all these orders in the Flagburg Dragon deck, one other change that you guys might also want to consider is changing the right deck entirely. Not Flagburg Dragon, but rather the Grade 1 and the Grade 2 into Rancor Chain and Black Tears Husk Dragon. So I'm pretty sure you guys already know by now, Zorga's right line is probably Stoicheia's best right line. Rancor Chain just digs so much into the deck, which is super useful for a piece reliant deck like the Flagburg Dragon deck. If you're going for a more order focused build, you can then play Rancor Chain and Black Tears Husk Dragon to capitalize on the draw power and not having to worry about penalizing yourself. I know people also like the Zorga right line, or not really Zorga right line, but Rancor Chain and Black Tears Husk Dragon, because it doesn't lose as much soul as the Flagburg Dragon right line, which is pretty funny because for a deck that relies on the soul, you constantly have like kind of not enough soul. You really have to manage your resources very carefully. So that's definitely something that you guys might consider. Roxy likes the Flagburg Dragon right line because it's a bit more aggressive in the early game, which fits better with her playstyle. So it's really up to you guys. As you can see, Roxy prefers monsters, cards that you can actually put down into the field, because she wants to start bashing the opponent as early as turn 1. So yeah, that's an entirely different Flagburg Dragon build. I've already talked about Aglio and Leoka when I was talking about Admantis, so we'll just skip over that. And that's basically it for the alternatives. Okay, so you know how I said that Inlet Pulse Dragon was the 3rd Restander? It's actually the 4th. Alright, this was the 3rd one, but High Rate Burst Dragon is just too costly in my opinion for this deck. So we used to play like 1 or 2 copies of him, but now Inlet Pulse Dragon just completely replaces him. And anyway, since we're already at it, let's just talk about Blue Vast Dragon, Shelling Cannon Dragon. So this is a monthly Bushiroad promo card, currently Japanese exclusive, that basically supports Flagburg Dragon, and it's a really good card. So let's have a look at this effect. Back row center rearguard circle. At the beginning of your battle phase, if your Vanguard is Flagship Dragon, Flagburg Dragon, and your opponent's Vanguard is Grade 3 or greater, counterblast 1 until the end of this turn. This unit can attack from the back row and gets plus 10,000 power. It is not a Restander, but it gives you more than just 3 attacks. Because now you're attacking from the back row. So you will be able to essentially make a minimum of 4 attacks, which is really good. Without even needing to restand, you're already making 4 attacks. And because it's a Grade 3 with 13k base, giving it plus 10,000 power brings it up to 23k power, which is a trigger guard. All you need is either one of the 3 Restanders in your front row, and you'll be guaranteed 5 attacks. And that is so easy. And not just that, Shelling Dragon also has another ability, which is when you will move or swap this unit during your main phase, you can also move it within the same row. So essentially, you can move anywhere on the board from the back row center rearguard circle. And that's super useful in situations where, like, you know, your other columns, your rearguards in the other columns are killed or whatnot. You can still move it up as an emergency attacker. The only issue with it, I guess, is its counterblast, because that, just like Restanders Assault, right, directly conflicts with Flagburg Dragon's effect, which also uses a counterblast. So I guess Price Trident isn't leaving the deck anytime soon. As long as Stoicheia gets more countercharge options, which this nation actually has quite a few, I think this card will be a mainstay in this deck. Honestly, we haven't really tried it out to know which card that we might be replacing this with. Maybe we'll cut down more in-road shooters, or maybe even aggress blue dragons, right, to fit this guy. But I think that Shedding Dragon is a really good card. It's a really solid card for this deck. All in all, Flagburg Dragon is a really fun deck. Its aggressiveness gives it a good matchup against the slower grade 4 decks out there. I would say the only thing really holding back this deck is maybe its reliance on pieces, and I would say definitely its resource management. But apart from that, I think the deck is pretty solid and it's very cheap. As you can see, all these cards here, a lot of them are rares or commons, right? The most expensive card is definitely Inlet Pulse Dragon. He will make up the main bulk of the deck's price. But if I'm looking to build something like that, see, all these cards are like commons and stuff. So not too expensive, as opposed to things like Magnolia Elder, right? So yeah, that's basically it for this deck profile for Flagburg Dragon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.